Following the closed cars, one I see is an open car, although the top is up because of the possibility of bad weather today. But nothing looks like an armored car or a bulletproof car to me. But behind these official cars, big black limousines, as they always are at least three, I can see at least three, and maybe there are more buses that, of course, are bringing from the international airport the many, many press representatives from all over the world, literally. There are hundreds of people from press, radio, and television here today. Cameras all over the place, and reporters reporting to their various radio stations down in front of us, and we're in a press area that is closely guarded by red-coated Mounties, by green, olive green jacketed Border Patrol people. I see now the dignitaries are coming up to the back of the rostrum. Who do you see there, Telford?
Well, the first I make out is Premier W.A.C. Bennett and Laurie Wallace, and he is followed by the Minister of Northern Affairs, the Honorable Arthur Lang, and they're just sort of milling around there, exchanging pleasantries.
Guy on the right, shaking hands.
We don't have any directions as to what place on the dais the gentlemen are going to take. I guess they'll just have to sort themselves out.
I might also point out that it was impossible for us to find out exactly who was coming today with the president. You heard him introduce most of the people, or who would be on this dais. Of course, such short notice for an occasion of this kind made it impossible for everyone to know who would be here. I see the Secretary of the Interior, Stuart Udall, is there on the platform. The Postmaster General, the Honorable John R. Nicholson, Mr. Jack Davis, Parliamentary Secretary of the Prime Minister, and as you have mentioned, Laurie Wallace, the Assistant Provincial Secretary, who probably is Mr. Bennett's aide today. Mr. Bennett and Mr. Wallace wearing bright yellow roses in their lapels, looking very smart. And because they are the official representatives of British Columbia, I noticed that none of the British Columbians, and indeed most of the Canadian representatives on the dais, are neither wearing hats nor coats. They are literally daring it to rain.
They are real optimists.
Behind the dais, of course, is a Stars and Stripes and the Red Ensign. The place, of course, is bedecked with flags. The flag of British Columbia is in a flower bed to the left of the dais, and the official flag of the state of Washington to the right, planted in the center of a flower bed. And I might also mention that the beautiful job that is done here by Sig Christensen, who is the Canadian caretaker of this international park, and Bob Weatherly, who is the American ranger responsible. The flowers are really beautiful, although this is a bad time of the year for this sort of thing. And as a matter of fact, they were telling us themselves that they had just removed all the annuals from the bed that completely encircle the arch itself. And so, mind you, the official notice coming to this area that this was to take place, very short notice, as you can imagine. So these men, on their own hook, heard this via radio and decided that this is going to happen. They better get those beds planted again. And on their own, they ordered $1,370 worth of shrubbery and plants, beautiful mums in gold, yellow, and purple, and the beds are bordered in bright red and purple cyclamen. And they ordered these flowers on their own to make sure that this park was represented the way it usually is, in such beautiful floral style, and they've done a marvelous job.
I was noticing, Len, that you said the President and the Prime Minister were going to be asked to walk rather slowly from their limousines to the dais here, and that was partially to give the gentlemen of the press who were ferried down here by bus a chance to get into the press area here. I was hoping that perhaps the gentlemen were going to show us likely candidates for the 1964 Olympics, because they have a long way to come.
Yes, I don't even think they have left their car. We can't. Oh, yes, they have. I see them now. They've left their car. They're coming along behind the Peace Arch with the President's aide and the security guard that always surrounds him, and the Prime Minister. They are now coming to the back of the platform, and the national anthem of the United States will be played. The American national anthem, of course, played by the visiting U.S. Army Band from Fort Lewis, Washington. The Canadian national anthem by the Royal Canadian Navy Band of HMCS Naden. And the screams that you are hearing, I believe, are from the lusty throats of Canadian children. Because there are some 30 or 40 busloads of Canadian boys and girls brought down here especially for this occasion. Now here is Premier Bennett.
Mr. Prime Minister, Governor Rossellini, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the proudest occasions in the history of the province of British Columbia. Mr. President, it is my great pleasure to welcome you officially to our province a short time ago at the Vancouver International Airport. I do so again on behalf of every citizen of British Columbia with a heartfelt assurance that although your visit with us is a very short one, we will remember it warmly for a long time, Mr. President. Meeting here today, we are reminded, sir, that the last President of the United States to visit British Columbia was the beloved, to the memory of all of us, Franklin Roosevelt. I think it is particularly fitting that we should gather here on the occasion of another presidential visit at a setting which symbolizes all that was statesmanlike about Franklin Roosevelt, all that made him truly one of the great men of history. The remarkable enduring relationship between two independent nations, which this peace arch celebrates, is by now so familiar to the people of our two countries that it may be taken for granted. But perhaps it would be well for us to proclaim more often to all the world the trust, the understanding, and the affection which Canadians and Americans have shared as a matter of course for 150 years. Because if good example is a spark of imitation, then we may light the way by our example to the new frontier of cooperation among the nations of a troubled world. The Columbia River Treaty, whose formal ratification we acknowledge here today, is another demonstration of our mutual confidence. The treaty itself and the mighty project it will set in motion are the products of many years of preliminary discussion and many months of direct negotiation. But through all the discussion, sight was never lost of the great good to be accomplished by the people of both our nations. As Canadians and as trustees for the people of this province, who are the owners of the Columbia River Resource in Canada, the government of British Columbia bore a heavy responsibility throughout these negotiations. And we would be perhaps less than human if we did not take real satisfaction in the knowledge that the financing formula put forward by the province of British Columbia was accepted by both the national government as the means of implementing the treaty's terms. We have all witnessed the benefits to every sector of a developing economy which follow the development of massive blocks of hydroelectric energy. It is rewarding to see these benefits enjoyed by a single province or a single state. It is infinitely more rewarding to see them extended to millions of people in both our countries. The province of British Columbia is blessed with a vast store of undeveloped hydroelectric power. We are already developing the mighty resource of the Peace River, and I can assure you, Mr. President and Mr. Prime Minister, that we will proceed just as swiftly and diligently to develop the Columbia River in keeping with the terms of the international treaty. Mr. President, I made reference earlier in my remarks to the last visit to British Columbia of a chief executive of the United States. That visit took place 27 long years ago, which is a long time between visits for friends. Your stay with us today has been all too short, but already we have come to look upon you as a valued friend and a personal friend. Therefore, we say goodbye today with confidence that our friendship will grow and be renewed, and that we may soon again extend the special welcome which awaits the visit to our province of the President of the United States of America. Now, Mr. President, we wish to commemorate this great occasion, and we had asked you to accept this small gift as a token of our appreciation of your visit here, and we hope that we'll remind you many times of your visit to British Columbia. Mr. Prime Minister, we're glad to see you two in our province. We wish and we invite you to come more often. And it is a great pleasure on behalf of the people of British Columbia that I present this to you. And I do so, I thank you for all the help that you have given to us in making this treaty a success.
Premier W.A.C. Bennett has just presented to President Lyndon Johnson and to Prime Minister Lester Pearson two Indian totem poles. Beautifully carved they are, too. Now here is Governor Rossellini.
President, Mr. Prime Minister, Premier Bennett, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, on this historic occasion, I am pleased and honored to welcome our distinguished guests to the great state of Washington. There could be no more appropriate site than this peace arch here in Blaine for today's treaty signing ceremony. This peace arch symbolizes the kind of spirit that has long existed between our peoples and the kind of cooperation that makes the Columbia River Treaty such a natural development for our country. Water and its benefits has been one of the greatest factors in the development of our area. This treaty will allow for even greater opportunities for industrial and recreational progress for all of our areas. The economic potential for this tremendous region of the world is unlimited. We trust that this pattern of joint development will be only the forerunner of even greater benefits and closer bonds between Canada and the United States.
Governor Albert Rossellini, the governor of the state of Washington.
Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. Premier, Mr. Governor, I have a telegram to read which is of considerable importance to the ceremonies that are taking place here today. It is a telegram addressed to the Prime Minister of Canada and has been received from Ottawa, and I shall read it as follows. The Ambassador of the United States of America and I met this morning to exchange instruments of ratification of the Columbia River Treaty in Ottawa as required by the treaty. We received confirmation by phone from the representative of the Minister of Finance and the representative of the underwriters, speaking from the office of the Morgan Guarantee Trust Company in New York City, that a check for $253,929,534.25, Mr. President, in United States funds had been transferred. We exchanged instruments of ratification and signed the protocol of exchange of instruments of ratification, an exchange of notes relating to the Canadian Entitlement Purchase Agreement between the British Columbia Hydro and Power Authority and the Columbia Storage Power Exchange dated August 13th, and an exchange of notes confirming the coming into force of the protocol to the treaty dated January 22nd. This telegram is signed by the leader of the Canadian delegation in the signing of the treaty between our two countries, the Honorable Paul Martin, Secretary of State for External Affairs.
That was the Honorable Arthur Lang, the Minister for Northern Affairs.
Now it would appear that the Prime Minister and Mr. Bennett are going to countersign the Treaty of Ratification. I don't think they're going to endorse the check at the moment, but they are at desks on the left-hand side of the dais, signing the treaty themselves on this important occasion. I notice the treaties are enclosed in red bound albums. Perhaps these are more or less commemorative treaties for the Prime Minister and Mr. Bennett, the Premier, to keep on this important occasion. I notice the treaties are enclosed in red bound albums. Perhaps these are more or less commemorative treaties for the Prime Minister and Mr. Bennett, the Premier, to keep as keepsakes of this memorable and very lucrative occasion, I might add. We had heard that rain began to fall at the airport as the people arrived, and it's beginning to fall here. Now here is Stuart Udall, Secretary of the Interior.
I'm honored to report Secretary of State Rusk has informed me the exchange between Canada and the United States of instruments of ratification of the Columbia River Treaty has been completed.
Mr. Udall, brief but to the point, to confirm Mr. Lang's previous announcement. And now here is the President himself, Lyndon James Johnson.
I proclaim this treaty from this day forth. Let it be observed in good faith by the government and the people of the United States of America.
The official proclamation by the President, and he will go to a small table on the right of the dais, and he will countersign the agreement, and I presume it will be in turn countersigned by Governor Rossellini. The books are being held by the Secretary of the Interior, Stuart Udall. The rain is beginning to come down here now, rather briskly, although it isn't dampening the enthusiasm of the crowd in any way. But I notice that Premier Bennett and the Prime Minister have donned raincoats. I'm sure much against their will, but they have donned the raincoats.
Well, and there's been a great deal of good-natured joshing go on about the turning over of this money. The check that was to be delivered to Premier Bennett today, the sum of, I believe, around $275 million, is to be taken immediately, supposedly by Royal Canadian Mounted Police escort to the bank, because it earns about $30,000 per day interest. Whether this is actually the case or not, as I said, it's all good-natured joshing. However, the amount of money, $275 million, is no small piece of change with which to be entrusted. This isn't all the money that British Columbia is going to gain from this Columbia River Treaty. $70 million will go to the province for flood control. And as the papers have stated, most of this money is to be invested by the province of British Columbia at 5% interest or better.
It looks as though the ceremony on the official dais is just about over now. All the dignitaries have risen, and the President is handing around the pens that were used on the signatures of this important and historic document in this important and historic setting. Here at the 49th parallel, the International Peace Arch at Blaine, Washington. Everyone is donning raincoats, and advisedly, because the rain is beginning to come down. We are not equipped here with a covered area from which to broadcast, but we did bring large umbrellas. We have lived in this province for some time, and therefore we are always ready to be prepared for the possibility, particularly at this time of year, that rain can fall. Now here is the Prime Minister who is going to address the throng. I thought perhaps he was not going to speak here.
Mr. President, Premier Bennett, Governor Rossellini, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's raining.
The Prime Minister has confirmed my prediction.
But I think the best thing I can do is to cut my speech short and let you get in out of the rain. But before I do that, may I say how honored and privileged I am to be here to participate in this impressive and moving ceremony with the President of the United States of America. I think the signing of this treaty is an important accomplishment, not only because it will be of great material benefit to our two countries and our two people in the development of the resources of this country, but because it is another illustration of friendship and good neighborhood and the way two countries can and should work together. Mr. President, we are grateful to you for coming to this border to make this possible. We are grateful to you for bringing with you distinguished members of Congress, members and important men in the political life of your country. We want you to know that you have been very welcome to Canada on this first visit to our country. We would like you to come back, and if you come back, you will see, Mr. President, that this treaty has indeed been a constructive one, and that it is going to work to the benefit of both of our countries. For that, we owe a debt of gratitude not only to the United States negotiators, but to the Premier of this province and those who have worked with him and with the federal negotiators to bring about a great day in the development of this part of North America and a great day in international cooperation between our two countries. Thank you very much.
The Prime Minister has concluded his short address, and now the President will make a more formal address than the one he gave a few moments ago.
Prime Minister, distinguished guests on the platform, ladies and gentlemen, there are many reasons why my first trip abroad as President should be to Canada. In 1839, J. Pinckney Henderson, the representative of the Republic of Texas to France and to England, wrote that Great Britain might delay its recognition of the new republic for fear of the impact in Canada. But Canada remained loyal. Great Britain recognized Texas, and that recognition helped open the door to American Union for Texas. Had that not happened, Mr. Prime Minister, had Texas stayed independent, practical diplomacy suggests that we might very well today be concluding a treaty of mutual defense against American influence. As a Texan, I can sympathize with the problems of living beside a wealthy and powerful and pervasive neighbor. That's just how the rest of the United States feels about Texas. More than 3 years ago, President Kennedy came to Canada. He told your Parliament his trip was an act of faith. He said it was faith in our capacity to meet common problems and in our common cause of freedom. Well, my trip today is a fulfillment and a renewal of that act of faith. It is both a resolution of a common problem and a strengthening of freedom's cause. Lord Durham, in the famous report that laid the foundation for modern Canada, spoke of the possibility of establishing partners in a new industry, the creation of happy human beings. That partnership is the purpose of this treaty that we have signed today. It will supply new electric power to millions of my countrymen. It will supply revenues to Canada, although I was somewhat shocked when I heard you read that cable about receiving $253,999,884, and then to show you what the Canadians really went, they went for that last 25 cents. It joins common purpose to common interest in the pursuit of the welfare of the free people who share our continent. Well, my country is grateful for the spacious spirit with which this generous design was conceived and with the way it was carried out, even down to the last quarter. It is another landmark in the history of one of the oldest and one of the most successful associations of sovereign government anywhere in this world. Well, what is the secret of this success? It begins with the truth. The only justifiable object of government is the welfare of individual men and women. It is a simple truth, but had others shared it with us, the world would have been spared many dark years. With this as the animating design, our partnership has been built on 4 pillars, and the success of that structure might well serve as a model to the world. The first pillar is peace. The second pillar is freedom. The third pillar is respect. One of my predecessors, Woodrow Wilson, said, "You cannot be friends upon any other basis than upon terms of equality." We maintain with each other the relationship that we seek for all the world. Cooperation amid diversity. Pericles said of a state that was much smaller than yours, "We have forced every sea and land to be the highway of our daring." In the founding of the United Nations, in the Middle East, in the Congo, in Southeast Asia. The world has responded to Canadian daring. You have followed not the highway of empire which helped destroy Athens, but you followed the more difficult path to peace, which, Mr. Prime Minister, can save the world. And you have been a principal architect, Mr. Prime Minister, of that profound achievement. The fourth pillar is cooperation. This agreement is the latest in an impressive list. We have disarmed our borders. We have shared the cost of defense. We have divided power at Niagara. We have built the St. Lawrence Seaway. We have resolved scores of other problems. Difficulties that divide us have united us. The reason is plain. We share interest and we share purpose. We come to the council table advised by reason, aware of each other's problems, anxious to find final agreement. You told us, Mr. Prime Minister, as good neighbors, that we must be able to sit down and to discuss problems, realizing that solutions will not be found without hard work and without give and take on both sides. We both have problems that we must solve within our borders. My country has a war to win on poverty. We must find justice for men of all races. We must crush the forces of division which gnaw at the fabric of our union. But you have your own difficulties. We watch your friendly confidence in your capacity to merge differences in the grand dream of Canadian design. But there is also much, Mr. Prime Minister, that we share together. In the world, we seek peace and mounting fulfillment for man. Here, we work together from ocean to ocean in resources and science to enrich the life of our two people, to elevate the quality of our two societies. Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, democracy is the form of government which guarantees to every generation of men the right to imagine and to attempt to bring to pass a better world. That has been the story of your life, Mr. Prime Minister. It is also the strength of our two countries. And I believe that future generations will have cause for gratitude that two great democracies, Canada and the United States, shared the most generous continent which God has ever granted to a man. Thank you.
Standing hatless before this assembled throng, a few of whom have left, the President of the United States, Lyndon Baines Johnson, looking extremely well and tanned and healthy, has just given his address on the ratification of the Columbia River Treaty. Now the President has embraced the Prime Minister, and they have gone to the back of the platform, down the platform, and through this arch of peace, this 67-foot high, white, massive structure that served as the backdrop for this magnificent occasion here today. The Peace Arch at Blaine, Washington. The HMCS Naden band from the Esquimalt now playing the dignitaries away. The press running with their cameras to catch further photographic glimpses of the President and the Prime Minister as they leave. The motorcade has been turned around, and I believe that they will take off immediately from here, but will have to walk back somewhat from their present location to get into their cars for the motorcade to take them back to the airport. I thought something had happened because of the slight screaming that was going on, and of course this man of the people, President Johnson, has gone back into the crowd quite, I'm sure, to his Secret Service men, quite unexpectedly. He has gone, instead of turning left after he went through the Peace Arch, instead of turning left over to the motorcade, he has turned right and gone right back, and he is right in behind our broadcast location, shaking hands across this barrier that separates the people some 30 or 40 feet from the dais upon which the ceremonies took place. I'm still underneath my umbrella, but Telford is weathering the driving southwest wind that is, and rain that is coming up here, and can see what's going on. Can you, Telford?
Well, it's pretty hard to see from here, Len, because as you know, we're standing amidst an absolute deluge, and the television cameras are around here more or less obstructing view. But I can see the president stretching out over the white wooden barricades, shaking hands with little children who are standing here in this downpour. As you say, it's a real headache for his Secret Service men, but he is accompanied by scarlet-coated RCMP officers, by members of the Washington State Highway Patrol, as well as his own personal bodyguards. I can't quite make out just exactly where he has gone now. The police are having quite a time trying to hold these barricades back. People surging up against them, crowding, pushing, jostling one another, trying to get a closer look at the president. Yes, I can make out his tan Stetson. It's quite rain-soaked right now. Umbrellas waving, turning inside out in this rather stiff southwest wind as people try to grasp his outstretched hand. He's made his way over now towards the limousine, but still the people press the police back. And they're holding little children up over the barricade in order to get a sight of the president. I can't at the moment see where the Prime Minister has gone, although the limousines are pulling up ready to take the dignitaries back to Vancouver's International Airport.
It looks to me as though the president will be spending a moment or two, and he is going now, or making his way along the barrier towards the cars, and then the cars will, of course, speed away to take the president and the Prime Minister and other members, official members of their party, to the airport. The president will then leave for a speaking engagement in Portland, Oregon. The Prime Minister will be remaining in Vancouver, where he will be attending a provincial Liberal caucus tomorrow, and then he will be addressing the Men's Canadian Club of Vancouver. The scene here, of course, is, one can only describe it as pretty damp. The people, though, are standing by marvelously well. Lots of umbrellas around, of course, but we're pretty used to this kind of weather here, and its unexpected occurrence. Although today, I think the weatherman was predicting rain. However, the morning seemed to dawn with great hope, but has deteriorated as the afternoon has gone by. Now, can you see, I think the cars are beginning to pull away so that the president and the prime minister in them. The Secret Service men are on the side of one of the official cars, and they are now speeding up north. They will go through the Canadian customs at Douglas, and then out Highway 99, which joins Highway 499 through the Dees Island Tunnel and back to the Vancouver International Airport.
Yes, Len, they have pulled away. The motorcycle escort is taken up, and they are now practically out of the Peace Arch area here.
They're receiving present arms from the guard of both Canadian and American Army men who are standing on the roadway on the west side of the park as an escort for them as they go by and through. Now, all the cars seem to have gone, which would pretty well wind up the ceremonies here at the Peace Arch, commemorating the ratification of the Columbia River Treaty, which will bring much riches and good fortune to the Pacific Northwest, particularly, of course, the province of British Columbia and the state of Washington. The American Army Band from Fort Lewis, Washington, have provided music, as well as the RCN Band from HSCS Hayden at Esquimalt. Bands from the Bellingham High School and the Blaine High School have been in attendance. Many, many dignitaries, chairs laid out and full to the right of the dais by some 150 to 200 dignitaries, and of course the official platform party. We have attempted through the eyes of CBC Radio to bring you a picture live and direct from the Peace Arch and the 49th parallel in Blaine, Washington, of this memorable occasion. On behalf of our engineer, Elmer Winton, and on behalf of my fellow commentator, Telford Oliver, this is Len Chappell. This is the CBC Radio Network.
Your dial is set at 1390 kilocycles. This is Radio Nelson, CKLN. Time 12 minutes before 3 o'clock.